9:30 p.m. October 21st, 2020. Heavy rain blanketed the London sky. The amber lights of Heathrow Airport shimmered across the soaked runway. A Gulfstream G650 came slicing through the downpour, its landing lights flashing as an emergency signal echoed through the night. When the cabin door opened, the figure who stepped out left the security staff frozen in disbelief. It was Prince Harry, a lone mum. No entourage, no luggage, just a black backpack slung over his shoulder. His face was pale, his eyes heavy with exhaustion and tension, as if he were carrying a secret the world had yet to hear. Outside, dozens of reporters waited in the cold rain. None of them knew the real reason why Harry had suddenly returned to London after years of self-imposed exile in America. Was it merely a family misunderstanding, or the final move in Queen Camilla's quiet plan to erase Harry from the royal bloodline? Think about it for a second. If you were Harry, would you dare to return to the place that once cast you out? Comment below, at Team Harry or at Team William. Just 12 hours earlier in Montecito, California, where Harry and Meghan now live, a confidential message from Buckingham Palace had been leaked. Executive order to revoke all Sussex titles, currently in draft. The moment he saw it, Harry reacted instantly. He said nothing to anyone, leaving behind a single note for Meghan. "I have to go." Then he boarded a flight straight to London, his first in 5 years, to confront Prince William at Clarence House. And the person rumored to be behind it all was none other than Queen Camilla. But to understand why Harry risked everything to fly through the night, we have to rewind the clock, back to 6 a.m. That same morning, when everything began to crack in Montecito, that sunrise was almost too perfect. The first light filtered through rows of eucalyptus trees, pouring into the glass window where Harry sat every morning, coffee in hand, scanning world news. Since leaving royal life, he'd grown used to such peace. No security detail, no ceremonies, no one calling him Your Royal Highness, just the sound of the wind, the birds, and the faint scent of dark roast coffee filling their hillside home. But that morning, the calm shattered with a single vibration. His phone lit up, an encrypted message from his former advisor in London, a man who once worked for Princess Diana. 7 words only. Executive order revoking Sussex title, William initialed. Harry froze. He stared at the screen, his eyes refusing to believe what he saw. His hand trembled so badly the coffee tilted, a few drops staining the wooden table. Silence filled the kitchen, heavy, unreal. A part of him wanted to think it was a prank, another online rumor, but the sender, that man, never joked about matters like this. Harry called immediately. On the other end, the advisor's voice was hoarse, urgent. "You have 24 hours to respond. Harry, after that, it's done. Once it's signed, no one can save you." Harry said nothing. He rose, walked to the window. Outside, the morning sun had climbed above the garden. Archie was kicking a football with the family's dog. Lilibet laughed on the swing, her curls glinting in the light. It was a perfect scene, peaceful, innocent, and yet his chest tightened painfully. He knew that if their titles were erased, his children would grow up without the name Sussex. Not just a title, but the last piece of legacy he had tried to keep. He placed the phone on the table, exhaled. "I have to go," he whispered. Meghan appeared at the doorway. She didn't ask. She didn't cry. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Go. Protect them. I'll stay here." In that instant, they were no longer symbols of rebellion, no longer the faces of media storms. Just 2 parents standing before a choice of survival. Less than 2 hours later, a black SUV pulled up to the private terminal at Santa Barbara Airport. Harry stepped out in a gray jacket, baseball cap pulled low. No Meghan, no children, just him. He walked straight toward the waiting Gulfstream G650. The cabin door sealed shut. Engines roared. A burst of wind swept across the tarmac, shattering the dry leaves, as the prince who once turned his back on the crown flew home, perhaps for the last time, for 11 straight hours. Harry didn't close his eyes once. He sat in silence by the window, watching layers of white cloud drift past like a slow-motion reel of his life. Memories blurred together, his mother's laughter, the grit of military training, the heated arguments with William, and the faint half-smile of Camilla whenever he walked through the corridors of Buckingham Palace. Everything, every scar, every silence, had led to this moment. One haunting thought circled in his mind, over and over again. They don't just want to take my title, they want to erase my children. At 9:30 that night, the jet touched down at Heathrow under a pounding rain. The London sky was thick and gray, the airport lights bleeding gold across the drenched tarmac. Two armored Range Rovers waited. Harry stepped out, coat soaked, head lowered. From the distance, the paparazzi engines roared to life. Hundreds of lenses turned toward him. Within minutes, photos flooded social media. Harry returns alone in the rain. Camilla's victory move. Harry didn't look up. He climbed into the car without a word. The Range Rover glided into the night, toward Clarence's house, once filled with childhood laughter, now the battlefield of a royal reckoning. Inside the small meeting room, the air was cold and sterile. William stood by the window, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed beyond the glass. Harry entered, face blank, silent. On the large screen in the center, King Charles appeared from his hospital bed in Sandringham, frail, pale, yet still wearing the solemn weight of a monarch. "Harry," Charles began, his voice gravelly, "I wish we weren't meeting under these circumstances." William turned, his tone firm, controlled. "This isn't personal, Harry. It's for the monarchy." Harry's lips curled faintly. "For the monarchy, or for your throne?" The air tightened. Rain hammered against the window, like a heartbeat getting faster. "You don't understand," William snapped. "Our image has been damaged because of you and Meghan. This is the only way to fix it." Harry slammed his hand against the table. "By erasing my children's names, that's your solution?" Charles coughed, voice trembling. "William, stop! We can't divide any further." But William didn't stop. "I'm not dividing. Father, I'm saving the people's faith." Harry's eyes reddened. "If this is your idea of saving, then you're killing our mother's alley." Silence, only the wind howled outside. Charles closed his eyes, weary. William said nothing, his face carved from stone. The meeting ended without a handshake, without a word. When Harry stepped back into the rain, London's storm hadn't stopped, and neither had the one inside him. For the next 4 days, he vanished, holed up in a small hotel in Kensington. Few knew where he was. Only a handful of aides came and went. Lawyers, security, and one old friend. Each day, Harry sat in a dim conference room on the 10th floor, yellow light casting long shadows across his tired face. Together they pored over every page, every clause, every comma of the letter's patent, the document that would decide whether he still counted as a royal at all. Outside, the press went feral. Headlines screamed across Britain, "Harry isolated." Camilla pulls the strings. Charles's silence grows suspicious. On the third night, Harry's phone buzzes. A message from Meghan. "The kids are fine. You're doing the right thing." He typed only 4 words back. "I'm still fighting." Then he set the phone down and stared out the window, London's lights glowing through the mist, unable to pierce the void inside his chest. At dawn on October 26th, he finally stepped out of the hotel. The air was sharp, cold, laced with drizzle. Dozens of reporters swarmed him, flashes cutting through the morning gray. Someone shouted, "Prince, do you still believe in your family?" Harry stopped. He looked straight into the cameras, his eyes sunken but steady. "Family," he said quietly, "isn't something you keep just because you were born into it. Then he turned and walked away. At that same hour, inside Buckingham Palace, a thick folder was laid on King Charles's desk. Its cover read, "Letters Patent, Revision of Titles, Duke and Duchess of Sussex." According to insiders, the signing deadline was set before Christmas 2025, less than 2 months to decide the fate of a son, a father, and two children bearing the name Sussex. That afternoon, Queen Camilla appeared at a charity event. When asked about the rumors, she smiled faintly. "We always do what's right to protect the monarchy," she said, her gaze razor sharp. A short sentence, but enough to ignite speculation. Was she the architect behind it all? William stayed out of sight. Some said he was at a defense conference. Others believed he was simply avoiding his conscience. As for Charles, the ailing king, sources whispered he was still hesitating. Not for politics. For the heart of a father. In a quiet hotel room across the city, Harry sat by the window, a lamp casting pale light over his hollow face. In his hands, a faded photo, him and his mother, in the Kensington garden. Diana's eyes, gentle as ever, seemed to watch him still. "Mom," he whispered, "if I can't keep the name, I'll keep the promise to protect my children." Outside, the rain kept falling. Drops streaked across the glass, blending with the pulse of a city caught in a royal storm with no end in sight. And somewhere between power and love, between duty and defiance, a man stood alone, quietly facing down an empire, just to preserve the name his children were born with. In those long, cold days in London, Harry began to understand that midnight flight wasn't about a title. He didn't return for his pride. He came home to shield Archie and Lilibet from the one label he feared most: ordinary. Because ever since leaving the palace, Harry had carried two halves of himself: the soldier who'd seen real war, buried friends in Afghan sand, and the son of Diana, the boy who'd walked behind her coffin as the world watched. Those two halves never reconciled until the day he became a father. Every time Harry watched Archie kicking a ball in the garden, or heard Lilibet giggling as she listened to bedtime stories, he thought of his own childhood, a childhood with no safe place to hide. He once wrote in spare, "I will protect my family at all costs, even if it means standing against the world." Perhaps, when he wrote those words, he never imagined that the world would one day mean the very monarchy he was born into. Now, that promise had become reality. He no longer needed a throne, nor titles, nor the words "His Royal Highness." He only needed his children to grow up without being branded as the royal family's stain. Harry wasn't fighting for status. He was fighting for meaning, for the name itself, for what his mother once told him: a child must know where they belong. But while Harry wrestled with the fear of losing his family, on the other side of London, his brother, Prince William, was living in another world. One of duty, pressure, and rules without mercy. William had been raised with a single purpose: to be the perfect heir. Since childhood, he had been told, the heir cannot make mistakes. Harry could fail, fall in love, speak out, even walk away. But William could not. Every step, every word, every glance he gave was measured as a reflection of the monarchy itself, and so he learned to be cold. Or maybe that was simply the only way to survive in a system that punished weakness. When the Sussex crisis erupted, William believed he had no other choice. He saw stripping the titles as necessary to restore the royal image, but not everyone agreed. Sky News quoted insiders claiming William even considered extending the measure to remove the titles of Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie in the name of fairness. Fairness or vengeance? That question split Britain in two. Many believed that after the publication of Spare, there was no going back for the brothers. In the book, Harry revealed William's anger, the shove that sent him to the floor. The family secrets the public was never meant to hear. For William, it was betrayal beyond forgiveness. For Harry, it was the only way left to tell his truth. In a closed meeting once, William reportedly said, "The honor of the monarchy must come before everything." Yet deep down, he must have known that honor was built not only on gold and ceremony, but on wounds. When he looked into the mirror, he no longer saw the boy who once held his brother's hand behind their mother's coffin, but the man willing to sign the paper that would turn that brother into a stranger. Between them, there was no longer right or wrong, only two men pulled to opposite ends of the same destiny. One chose to leave to save his soul. The other stayed to protect the throne, and both were losing the one thing that mattered most: family. London's night remained cold, while Harry sat alone, staring at the palace lights from afar. William was in his office at Sandringham, reading through briefing papers and press reports. Outside, the rain fell on two rooftops. Two brothers, two worlds, listening to the same wind, yet no longer speaking the same language. Perhaps, deep within, they both still remembered their mother, the woman who once told them that low love is stronger than power. But Diana was gone, and no one was left to mend the cracks. And so her two sons, one across the ocean, one across the throne, kept walking in opposite directions, where light and shadow blurred, and the British monarchy was no longer a home, but a border dividing two hearts that share the same blood. As London remained shrouded in fog and rain, every eye began turning toward one name: Queen Camilla. The quieter she stayed, the more people feared her. Whispers spread across the international press. Was Camilla the one quietly moving the royal chess pieces? GOTV published a short but explosive line. Camilla is urging William to remove every threat to the throne. Neutral words on paper. But in this storm, they cut like a knife. In Spare, Harry had written that Camilla was the villain of the royal story. He accused her of using the media to rebuild her image, sacrificing others' reputations to win public favor. Now, as reports spread of the Sussex titles being revoked, the world began to wonder, was this Camilla's revenge? No longer the most hated woman in Britain, Camilla was now the queen, standing behind a strong William, a weakened Charles, and a solitary Harry. In the eyes of many, she had become the cleaner of the monarchy, not with light, but with shadow. Meanwhile, across the ocean in Montecito, Meghan Markle remained at home with their two children. Every morning, she made milk, prepared breakfast, took Archie to preschool, then read books to Lilibet. Life seemed peaceful, but each hour, each minute, she lived under the storm still known as Megxit. The British press kept its drumbeat of blame. If not for Meghan, Harry would never have left. If not for Meghan, there wouldn't be a second Diana. She had become the woman to hate, mocked, condemned, accused of dividing a dynasty. And yet, every few hours, Meghan still texted her husband. Not to complain, but to remind him, don't let them win. We chose freedom, and freedom always has a price. Those short messages were the final thread connecting their two worlds, one fighting in London, the other holding the flame in California. Meanwhile, King Charles, father, monarch, and a man battling cancer, had become the weakest figure in this royal drama. Each day, he lay in his bed at Sandringham, staring through the home outside his window, where mist rolled over empty fields. Doctors urged him to rest, but he kept demanding updates from the palace. One evening, Charles asked for a video call with his son. When the screen lit up, the frail face of the king appeared, tired, pale, but smiling softly. His voice was hoarse. "My son, don't let this family fall apart." Harry said nothing. In his eyes, the man on the screen was no longer the king of the British Empire, but simply the father who had once stood silently as he and William walked behind their mother's coffin. Yet the cruelest truth was this: Charles no longer had the strength to stop William. He knew what was happening, but the crown had shackled the hands of a father. "I'll try to speak with William," Charles rasped, before breaking into a cough. The call ended with static. The screen went black, leaving Harry staring at his own reflection. Half of that man was a king, the other half, a father reduced to pleading. And caught in this game of grown men were two innocent souls, Archie and Lilibet. Archie was 6, Lilibet just 4. They went to school like any other children, but around them were security fences, curious stares, and the innocent questions of classmates. Are you really a prince? If the decision to revoke the titles went through, the two children would lose their HRH, his and her Royal Highness, along with their indirect place in the royal line of succession. Harry knew it. In a closed meeting with his legal team, he said, "I won't let my children grow up in the shadows of a palace. I left so they could live in the light, not so they could be erased." That sentence spread like wildfire, shared by millions. To the public, Harry was no longer the rebellious prince. He was a father, defending his children from the cost of a crown. But elsewhere in the royal family, a mother storm was brewing. Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, daughters of Prince Andrew, had reportedly been added to the same list for title removal. The public was stunned. William called it a necessary act of fairness to preserve the consistency of the monarchy. But insiders knew it was politics, a calculated move to calm outrage, to prove that stripping Harry's titles wasn't personal. Eugenie had once been Harry's closest ally. They'd attended parties together, vacationed together, and she was the first royal to meet Meghan. Now she remained silent. No statement, no appearance. A friend confided to the Times, "Eugenie doesn't want to lose anyone else." And so, while William spoke of fairness, the public called it collective punishment. Buckingham Palace stayed silent. No confirmation, no denial. But the latest photographs showed Camilla and William emerging together from a private meeting. Their eyes didn't face the cameras. They looked straight toward the gates of Buckingham, where only the ghosts of the past seemed to remain. From California to London, from Sandringham to Montecito, every player in this royal drama was moving across a chessboard no one truly controlled. Camilla, once the nation's villain, now appeared to hold the fate of an entire dynasty. Meghan, long blamed, stood firm beneath waves of accusation. Charles, the father who once dreamed of peace, was fading between two sons who no longer recognized each other. William, the heir, was trapped between duty and resentment. And Harry the spare was fighting an entire institution to protect two small children. Those children, Archie and Lilibet, may never fully understand why their parents left the palace, or why those gates will never open for them again. But one day, when they are grown, they might learn freedom is never given. It's earned through tears, loneliness, and love. And so the question remains, who truly wins this war? The one who keeps the throne, or the one who walks away from it? Perhaps the answer will only be known by time, and by the children who bear the name Sussex. The battle over the Sussex titles was no longer just a royal dispute. It had become a national debate, a war of words stretching from coffee shops to classrooms to global newsrooms. Two camps emerged clearly: Team William, those who believed order must be restored, and Team Harry, those who saw only cold revenge disguised as royal justice. William's supporters argued that every storm began with Harry himself. He had opened the door to chaos with the release of Spare, revealing family secrets, from fights with William to deeply personal childhood wounds. To them, that was betrayal. One royal analyst even declared on live television, "Harry has turned his mother's story into a media weapon. He no longer behaves like a royal." They insisted that revoking titles was not punishment, but protection. Protection of the monarchy's integrity, especially after Prince Andrew's own disgrace, the scandal that led to his public downfall. The monarchy must cleanse itself. A BBC Newsnight commentator said, "If Andrew could be stripped of duties, then why should Harry, who publicly dragged the family through the mud, be spared?" William's camp framed it as a matter of principle. You're either in the system and abide by it, or you're out, and you accept the loss of privilege. Titles, they said, were not rights, but responsibilities. A royal law expert summarized, if Harry chose freedom, he must accept that freedom comes with accountability. You cannot leave the monarchy and still expect its benefits. But Harry's supporters saw things very differently. They called the title removal, especially for Archie and Lilibet, immoral outrage. After all, the children had done nothing wrong. Except be born with Windsor blood. Online, thousands echoed the same message. Punishing children for their parents' choices is the cruelest act of all. Progressive commentators questioned why Harry was being treated so harshly when history had been far kinder to others. Edward VIII, the king who abdicated his throne for love, had been allowed to keep his title, Duke of Windsor, for life. If Edward was not stripped, they asked, why should Harry, who merely spoke his truth, be condemned? Was this still law, or had it become personal emotion disguised as policy? American outlets like the Washington Post joined in, writing that William's actions carry the tone of revenge more than justice. One column put it bluntly, Harry is branded a rebel for choosing authenticity. William, in trying to preserve image, is becoming a reflection of the very system that once broke their mother. Between those two worlds, order and empathy, tradition and truth, the public grew ever more divided. Many sided with William, believing the crown cannot afford to be soft. That strength preserves its symbolic power. But just as many stood with Harry, convinced that compassion and humanity are the only values that can save the monarchy in the modern age. ChatGPT and I, the longer the argument went on, the clearer it became. This was never just about two brothers. It was a collision between two worlds, one ruled by ancient law, the other driven by the desire to live as ordinary human beings. A British talk show asked the question directly, did Harry betray the monarchy? Or did the monarchy betray the values of Diana? No one could answer. As night fell over London, headlines filled the air, justice or revenge, title removal, a matter of duty or emotion. People began to realize that justice doesn't always lie in law, but in the hands of those who write it. And inside Buckingham Palace, once the emblem of order and honor, one haunting question echoed through its stone corridors, demanding the world's attention. London, late October. Cold winds swept through the old marble halls of Buckingham Palace. The doors remained shut, curtains drawn, but everyone knew a silent war was raging within. And the more rumors leaked, the more one name surfaced again and again. Queen Camilla, the woman who once lived in Diana's shadow, once branded the other woman, was now Queen of England. Yet the higher her power rose, the deeper suspicion grew. GOTV was the first to fan the flames. Camilla is urging William to eliminate every threat to the throne. One single line, enough to send the country into uproar. Whispers spread that while Charles lay ill in bed, it was Camilla who truly ruled. She held private meetings with advisors, reviewed media briefings, and occasionally appeared beside William, calm, guarded, and unreadable. Sources claimed she had been the one urging him to act quickly before the king's health declined further. The goal, they said, was simple: to clear the board of all threats. To many, that was all the proof they needed. Commentators began calling her the hidden hand of the monarchy, the strategist turning a family feud into a political campaign. Some even dubbed her the monarchy's final chess player, the one who knew that true power never rests on the throne, but beside it, and Harry had warned about her before. In Spare, he described Camilla with one chilling word: villain. He accused her of using the press to rebuild her image, of feeding stories about others in exchange for her own redemption. To him, she wasn't just his father's second wife. She was the embodiment of calculation without conscience. So when news of a new letter's patent spread, the world turned back to Harry's memoir as if it had foretold it all. Headlines erupted. Camilla's revenge on Harry? The Shadow Queen behind the purge? Day after day, the questions grew louder, echoing across tabloids and talk shows alike. Yet not everyone believed in the conspiracy. Another camp viewed Camilla with sympathy. They saw her not as a manipulator, but as a protector, a woman shielding a frail king caught between two warring sons. They argued that Camilla understood better than anyone how one scandal could destroy the monarchy's image. And so she chose silence. A Guardian columnist wrote, Camilla once symbolized guilt. She has spent her life seeking forgiveness. A woman who has tasted that much bitterness would never be foolish enough to repeat her mistakes. Those who had met her said the same. She was no longer the schemer of the 1990s. She was quieter, more reflective, often advising Charles to avoid conflict. Perhaps she was merely a victim of the media machine, recast as a shadow queen because every story needs a villain. Still, questions lingered. If she was innocent, why did she remain silent while Harry accused her openly in spare? Why not deny the rumors? Was her silence strength or confession? Did power now speak best by saying nothing at all? And so public opinion split once more. To some, she was the most powerful hidden hand in Britain. To others, the woman hated even when she does nothing wrong. No one knew which version was true, only that Camilla continued to appear beside William at official events, her expression calm, untouched by the storm around her. And above the London skyline, one question still hung in the mist. Was she the victim of rumor or the shadow queen behind it all? While the public debated Camilla's role, analysts began to look beyond the noise to what would follow once the storm settled. A title crisis, they warned, never ends with a signature. It leaves wounds, quiet, deep, and generational. For Harry, the outcome seemed inevitable. He would lose his title, his symbol, his final thread to the royal system. But in doing so, he would gain what he had searched for all along: freedom, no more curfews, no more palace press control, no more living under the weight of lineage. Harry could finally exist as a father, a citizen, a man not defined by his bloodline. An American scholar told CNN, Harry is living the life Edward VIII once dreamed of, freedom without the need to bow. Yet freedom came at a cost. European human rights lawyers noted that if the UK formally stripped Harry's children of their royal status, he could take the case to the European Court of Human Rights, claiming discrimination over hereditary rights and titles. Such a case would be unprecedented, a prince suing his own monarchy. If the court ruled in Harry's favor, the damage would extend far beyond the palace. It would mark a diplomatic scar that could forever stain the image of the British crown. But if Harry lost, he would still win in another way, in the hearts of the Western public, who saw him as a symbol of awakening against authoritarian tradition, because even stripped of his titles, Harry would still hold the one power the monarchy could never take, the right to tell his story for the royal family. However, victory was a double-edged sword. Stripping the Sussex titles might restore order, but the price would be public trust, the very foundation on which the House of Windsor had stood for more than a century. The British have always admired pride, but they also cherish compassion. And now, to many, the monarchy no longer looked like a symbol of unity, but a fractured family, slowly tearing itself apart, one title, one heart, at a time. British newspapers began using a new phrase, the fractured monarchy. Every move the royals made was dissected under a microscope of suspicion. Every smile on television was dismissed as performance. And scholars began to warn, when a monarchy loses public trust, it doesn't fall to revolution. It dies from indifference. Worse still, the damage no longer stopped with Harry. It began to reach William, now seen by many as the new overlord, a colder echo of his father. The public asked the question no one dared answer. If William can strip his own brother of his title, what will he do when he becomes king? In this portrait of a family unraveling, Charles appeared as a lonely monarch, too frail to rule, too powerless to reconcile his sons. To the British people, he was no longer the ruler of a realm, but a father on his knees, praying instead of commanding. And Camilla, guilty or not, remained the target of every arrow. Across the ocean, Meghan still texted every morning, "Don't let them win. We chose freedom." And Harry, caught in the storm, stayed true to that choice. He knew he might never return, but when he looked into his children's eyes, he could at least say he hadn't stayed silent. The royal family, meanwhile, remained silent. No denials, no confirmations, only ceremonial photographs, stiff handshakes, and the blinding flash of cameras cutting through the London fog. And soon, the world began to wonder if even this family, once called the symbol of endurance, could fracture so completely. What meaning did royal power still hold in the 21st century? Perhaps, in the end, justice itself would have to be redefined. But one truth was undeniable. Once trust is lost, a throne becomes nothing more than an empty chair in a cold palace. That is the price of power. And it's the lesson the British monarchy is now rewriting, line by line, with the tears of those who bear the name Windsor. And that is the full picture of the crisis shaking Britain to its core. A prince rushing back to London in the middle of a storm, a palace preparing to sign an order that would erase the Sussex name, and behind Buckingham's frozen walls, whispers that Queen Camilla might be the mind behind it all. Harry didn't return for power. He came back for his children. But that single act divided the entire world. One side believes he betrayed the monarchy and must face the consequences. The other sees a man punished under the guise of royal justice. William, Camilla, Charles, Meghan, and the two children, all trapped in a chess match where no one truly wins. And now, as events edge toward a point of no return, only one question remains. Who will keep their soul intact in this war for honor? If you were Harry, what would you do? Would you accept the loss of your title, bow your head, and fall silent like those before you? Or would you bring everything to light, take them to an international court, to defend the dignity and future of your children? There's no easy answer, but somewhere between those two extremes stands a man, alone, fighting an empire centuries old. Share your thoughts below, because this story isn't just about the royals, it's about us. Between justice and revenge, which would you choose? If you stand with Harry, hit like, let the world see that justice doesn't always belong to the powerful. And if you believe William is doing what must be done to protect the crown, subscribe, because this story is far from over. Every comment you leave will show where the world stands. Hashtag Team Harry or Tash Team William. Who truly holds the world's heart? Don't forget to turn on notifications, because with every hour, every minute, new information from Buckingham is rewriting history. And before we close today's video, remember this. Behind every title, every ceremony, every royal decree, there are still human beings wrestling with love, power, and the fear of losing everything. They may carry the name Windsor, but they bleed and break like any family on earth. Our next video will reveal another secret. The truth about King Charles's health. Can he survive until Christmas 2025? A story not just about medicine, but about a throne, a legacy, and a transfer of power being prepared in the shadows. We'll see you in the next episode, where every truth begins to surface. And remember, the right to know, the right to choose, and the right to speak your mind will always belong to you. Belong to you. Belong to you. Belong to you. Belong to you.